Frank's Red Hot is the perfect blend of flavor and heat, so you can use an entire bottle to make recipes like buffalo chicken dip or buffalo nachos, or even things that don't start with buffalo. Frank's Red Hot, I put that on everything.
Hey, Craig.
Hey, Jeff. Finally, we're back.
Oh, buddy, we are back.
Nothing has happened. Nothing has happened in the time we have been gone. It's just been quiet because it's summer.
Yeah. That's how it typically goes. And then, we have media day and, typically we get some manufactured storylines, except this year there's actual storylines. So
yeah. And, in case you're wondering, this is Podcast versus Everyone, episode, at 125. Ooh, cool.
It is 125.
Nice
round
uneven
number
round
for your
number.
brain.
Yeah, 125. I am Craig Powers. With me is the infamous Jeff Nusser, as always.
Pretty infamous. I don't know. Pretty infamous right now among certain circles. That's for sure.
Yeah.
I got an email that just said, "You're the embarrassment," and that was the whole email. So,
well, I mean, I'm sure. Sorry, my lamp just fell over. I'm sure that if your teen hasn't said that to you yet, did it come from your son? Like, did you check?
No. This was from a Coug Center reader.
Maybe he was just posing.
Oh, maybe my son
saw it as an
was
opportunity.
Posing. Yeah,
he saw it as an opportunity because
he was pretty mad at me the other night.
Teens love to express how embarrassed they are by their parents.
It's true. The other night he was so mad at me, he put up a sign on his door that basically barred me from entering. Which was pretty hilarious. I forget exactly what it said, but it basically was like, only people who care about their kids is allowed in here, and that's not Jeff Nusser.
Wow.
I was like, I don't know, man. You're 14. I'm not. That's a little melodramatic for a 14-year-old. I mean, obviously teenagers have their own particular brand of melodrama, but that one, I was like, I don't know, man. That was a little much. He'll probably listen to this and laugh at it, but I understood. I understand.
That actually sounds a lot like something your middle one would do.
Yes, it does. And he has done that before. So, but yeah, no, Joshua was, you're 14. Everything feels very, very, incredibly important. And then, maybe it's not quite as important as you think it is, but it feels very important in the moment. So, we have grace. We talked about it. We're all good.
And Joshua, your feelings are valid. So
that's right. Absolutely.
Yep. Yeah. All right. So, the media day.
Are we going to talk
happened.
About feelings?
Yeah, we're talking about feelings. Media day happened. We just talked about football. Did something happen
in media day?
No, I think we just talked about football, and that was it.
Yeah.
What else is there to say? Who knows? No, but of course, for reasons that anyone who listens to this knows, like WSU's head coach Nick Rolovich was not actually there. Did his media day duties via, or at least the ones he could do, via basically a Zoom call.
Yep.
I found the picture kind of funny with the room of reporters and the stage, and then next to the stage a big screen.
I thought it was hilarious.
Yeah, it was pretty funny. And of course, the topic of conversation was not so much football. He started with his long address, which included discussing his decision not to get vaccinated. And of course, he gave the reason. No, I'm just kidding. So he still, talked about how he doesn't want to not going to give his reason. Interesting, and we can talk about this later. And then, his players kind of came to his defense, talked about his personal choice, and Jihad Woods pointed out that we don't know the whole story, but then he of course admitted that he doesn't know the whole story either.
Yeah, it's a mystery.
But I thought it was interesting how Rolovich said he's not against vaccinations. He's in support of other people getting vaccinations, but just not going to get one himself. What were your thoughts on that, Jeff?
Well, I mean, the whole thing from the beginning is like, you're the head coach of the, two of the large state one of the two large state universities, right? Pac-12 football program, big time deal. Like, I mean, I know you're in Pullman, so, the media light doesn't shine quite as brightly, but still, you just kind of don't get to skate on that one. Like, we're in the middle of a pandemic. We have a trio of vaccines that by any measure are safe and effective at keeping people from dying. Other things that they may or may not be effective at include, preventing transmission, et cetera. We're still sort of learning some of that stuff. But the one thing we know with virtual certainty is it keeps people from dying. And that's kind of the whole point. And so, to just say like, it's a personal decision, I'm not going to talk about it, is just, as anybody who's been to Coug Center, which if you're listening, you probably have, that I expressed that, Brian Floyd expressed that, and whatever. What I found sort of interesting about Media Day was, Rolovich isn't, he's not a super animated guy, but he's kind of, I guess I would say intense. Like he's kind of intense when he speaks. He speaks with conviction. That is not the tone with which he spoke at Media Day. As you mentioned, he made his statement only after he had sort of this 8-minute long rambling opening statement, which, coaches typically start with an opening statement, but it's typically like, I don't know, like 2 or 3 minutes. Like, hey, we're real excited, and we think we got a real good team, and
best shape of our lives.
All right,
yeah.
We're in the best shape of our lives. The weight gains this last year, this off season have been tremendous. I'm very excited for this upcoming season, and with that, I'll take your questions. And then it's 20 minutes of questions, and away you go. And then Rolovich.
Hold on, dude. I never heard your coach voice before, and it was
you like that?
Fantastic, dude. It was great.
That's what.
You got to bust that out more often.
Anybody who wants to hear that, Jed Fish. Listen to Jed Fish's, so the new coach at Arizona, listen to his interview or his media time. You'll hear it. He's definitely that's what he was like. So he is very energetic, which I guess you can be when you're brand new and you're taking over at Arizona. So, but anyway, it's some variation of that. There's excitement, there's optimism, there's all that, and there was none of that in anything that he said. He spent 8 minutes, like I said, just sort of rambling in a way that was, just sort of like, it was sort of like, okay, I know I'm going to have to talk about this other thing at some point, so let me stall as long as I can, burn off. I mean, because each coach obviously only has an allotted amount of time, right? So the more time he burns off with his opening statement, the less questions he has to face, right? So he did that, and then about 8 minutes in, he reads his prepared statement, which I don't know if he had a teleprompter or what, because he was like not looking down while making this statement. I was like, oh, maybe he memorized it. I don't know, but it just was like, again, you reference kind of the high points, right? That, I've made a personal choice. I'm not against vaccination. And then he went on to, say things about, hey, I'm fully supportive of the vaccination effort. And, wazoo, I didn't intend to bring any embarrassment to the university, blah, blah, blah. It just like, as I'm listening to the statement, I'm like, this sort of sounds like liability bingo, like I'm going to say the things that I need to say to not, cause a liability issue either for the university or for myself. It's sort of like, it's almost like he sat down with Pat Chun and Kirk Schultz, and they were like, hey, listen, fine, you are going to say these things then. Yep. And so he's like, okay. And so then he said those things, and, whatever. He only faced a couple of more questions about it after that, which I was a little disappointed by. Not that I necessarily expect anything different, because these things are, it's a media scrum, right? I mean, each person gets to ask one, maybe two questions, and then the time is over.
Well, yeah. And if you're not writing, if you're not tasked with writing a story about Nick Rolovich being not unvaccinated, then you're not going to ask a question about that, because you don't need that for your story.
Well, and for people who don't aren't really familiar with the purpose of media days, like fans might think of it sort of casually as, oh, it's this thing for fans heading into the season. It's really for media members. And even if you know that, you may not even understand necessarily how they use the stuff. They will ask questions in order to get answers that they plan on using later, sometimes even like weeks later or months later. They'll ask about a thing, they'll take the notes, they're already thinking about their stories, like, oh, hey, the team that I cover is playing Washington State in 3 weeks, so let me ask them this question that I can take the response and come back to it later, right? So, or I'm writing my conference preview or whatever. So everybody's got different reasons for being there. So it doesn't surprise me that he wasn't totally hammered on the vaccination thing. I thought the questions were a little weak and a little deferential, because he, at one point, he kind of, I don't know, pushed back a tiny bit. Maybe pushback is too strong, but was a little bit like, I understand the point of your question. He's like, well, and it's kind of like reporters do because they don't want to piss off a coach, and
gotta have that access.
I get, but at the same time, I'm like, I wish people had maybe pushed him a little bit harder. I think where he probably will get maybe pushed a little harder is when he does his first like real deal local media access, and then I wouldn't be shocked if sort of outsiders end up joining that and asking harder questions. So yeah, I mean, I guess I would say I'm happy that we seem to have avoided further embarrassment, despite, beyond the fact that, our coach was there on a screen and also sounded like he would rather be doing anything else other than answering those questions. I've literally never heard a coach less excited in a media day session than Nick Rolovich was.
After what was on our site, what not only on our site, like what he could have, the backlash he got, he probably thought he was going to get hammered more. But it
came from all corners too. It wasn't just us.
I did want to point out, like, I think we have some data about it now, and it's pretty clear that, the coach influences the players, and, WSU is, on track to have a good vaccination rate, better than the general population. The football team, but still, they were one of the lower vaccinated teams while being located in one of the higher vaccinated states. And so, they're in one of the lower vaccinated counties in the state, but it's still, I got to think the coach had, an influence on that, maybe not directly, maybe not implicitly, or explicitly, but maybe implicitly. And so, we saw, UW talked about being 100% coaching staff vaccinated, 95% players, whatever. And yeah, so but like I expressed to you before, that I'm pretty tired of it. Like it's frustrating that we got to talk about this stuff.
We want to be talking about football, man.
So if we do want to talk a little bit about the football, well, one thing, we hope they get that vaccination rate up. And although, with Delta variants and stuff, who knows if, we could still be transmitting and just not getting us sick. But there's a chance that Pac-12 is going to follow suit with some other conferences and bring back forfeits if you can't field a team instead of reschedules. So that should be some incentive to get that team vaccinated. It's one, if the coach has to miss the game, then you can still have the game. But but if you can't, but if you're down to WSU had too many players to not field a team multiple times last year, and even the games they played, they barely had enough players. They had 32 out for Oregon State. Utah, I don't remember how many were out, but they barely, the players were dead by second half because there were so few players. But now instead of being delayed, it's probably just gonna be a forfeit, which will be a bummer, and I hope that doesn't happen. But we'll see. Because I'm real excited to watch the games in Pullman. Probably masked at this point, and then
maybe.
We'll see. But and then one other thing is that WSU was picked last in the Pac-12 North again. Big surprise. But,
no shock. I guess I'm a little surprised that they were behind Oregon State, but
yeah.
People are, if you look at what Oregon State has done and recruiting wise, transfers, they brought in some pretty decent transfers. I guess you talk yourself into that. I don't know. I can't really quibble with it. I'm a guy sitting here going I'm thinking we're heading for 4 or 5 wins. So
exactly.
So I don't know that I complain too much. I guess I was mildly surprised by that, but not super surprised.
Whatever, if it puts a chip on their shoulder, that's fine. I'll say the funniest thing was Jihad tweeting the video of Max sleeping with his. We still got 10 more things to do. Hang in there, young Max. Which is
Jihad's funny. I've done this before, man. We are not even close to done. He's been through that. He's done that car wash down there. It's a lot. It's a lot,
Well,
so
Jihad's a super senior, and
yes,
we got some bad news about one of our super duper seniors. Just in the same week, which was a real bummer. It was the next day, pretty much. Was the Renard Bell out for the season, torn ACL, which sucks.
Sucks majorly.
Yeah, so, he says he's coming back, which would be his 7th year in Pullman.
It's bonkers.
I hope he's getting a master's degree.
I hope he's getting 2 master's degrees.
Yeah, no kidding.
After 7 years, my master's degree took 1 year on top of my bachelor's, dude should be walking out of there with a slew of diplomas. Yeah. That would be awesome. What would you do? If you were okay, well, let's see. I don't know.
Well, because you have to take classes to be eligible. It's not
maybe an MBA, right? So an MBA seems like a pretty popular one, right? I don't know what else you would do to kind of add on top of that. I don't think they offer.
Probably avoid things that required a thesis.
Maybe a master's degree, some sort of communications master's. I don't know what they offer, which is probably pretty sad since I am a product of that College of Communications, but I don't know. Anyway,
I don't hear many masters of communications degrees.
No, you don't. I don't think we offer a master of journalism or anything like that. So I don't know, man. Somebody's probably going to hear this and be like, "No, sir."
If it's a College of Communication, it has to have graduate programs, right?
Maybe. I don't know. I'm sure they do. I feel foolish now, Craig. Feel a little foolish because I feel like I should know this.
I definitely I almost went and got a master's in journalism from City University, New York. I was accepted. but then I got a job right before I kind of had to commit. And so I just got the job. You can get a Master's of Arts in Communication.
Hmm.
You can get a strategic communication master's. I don't know if that's through the. I
That's
don't
a
know if
good one.
that's. I don't know if that's through the College of Communication. That's an
That
online
seems right
program.
up Renard Bell's a really excellent communicator. So I mean, that'd be right up his alley.
Yeah, Stratcom is communications. You can also get an online master's in communication and health.
Ooh.
And then you can get certificates in those things. They have a doctoral program.
Really?
Residential masters.
He could get a PhD. He could do that. He'll have lots of time on his hands rehabbing.
Yeah, I definitely think
working on that on that thesis.
Renard's got some comm skills. I think he could.
Yes, he does.
He could do well with that.
He'd be outstanding.
Yep. But football wise,
we're just avoiding the football part because it's so depressing.
Because it sucks. Yeah.
Just
I mean, it sucks.
Ass.
It sucks for Renard, but it really sucks for the team too. Like,
I'm terrified, man.
We've gone from in 2018 just an absolutely stacked
almost
lineup,
embarrassing,
and then even 2019 still pretty good. To now at this point, it's a pretty thin lineup. Like luckily we're not running like air raid with massive amounts of rotation. Like it's only going to be a few guys that get a lot of the reps, but still, you just lost one of your best guys after you lost Jameer Calvin in the off season. Like basically, you're not returning much now. You got Calvin Jackson. Luckily, you came back, but it's just it's just CJ Moore. It's a transfer. It's just not ideal in the receiver. No. Like Renard was gonna. Obviously you have Travell Harris too, but Renard and Travell were probably going to be the guys. Well,
they were the two top targets last fall with Delora. I mean, he clearly preferred throwing to his inside guys, whether that was a function of the offense or defenses or just comfort level with, getting used to the college game. I mean, whatever it was, he clearly preferred throwing to those two guys the most. And so, now you take away one of those guys, like, I don't know, man. He's a
very, very talented player.
Yeah. I mean, it's scary how thin we are at wide receiver in terms of experience. Now, maybe the guys behind them are really great. Maybe, Joey Hobart is, destined to be a superstar and, whatever. I mean, I don't know. But what I know is, when you think about the talent that we had there and how many of those guys are no longer there, that's just and then, you look at, CJ Moore, we're very excited about his talent level in terms of raw talent and, but the fact remains he's a JUCO transfer. I mean, we're counting on a lot of inexperience and, I don't know, when somebody gets hurt and we're not too far away from all sorts of interesting stuff.
Well, yeah, we were talking about it the other day before when we were at Flatstick for the Sounders game. Is like could we see Max line up in the slot? I think
it's entirely possible.
Because as we've talked about before, we have two very good running backs, but it's 100% single back offense, and that does not rotate that much. They're either Max or probably McIntosh is not going to get many reps if Max is in there. But we know Max has got skills receiving, maybe not necessarily standing up in the slot. Who knows? But I'm sure
maybe he does though.
Maybe he does.
Maybe he does.
And and now McIntosh does not strike me as someone that does, but maybe Max does. And so, I mean, if you want to get all your best playmakers on the field, it might be worth having Max play inside receiver. So just then you have, because honestly, right now, your four best playmakers are Calvin Jackson, Travell Harris, Deion McIntosh and Max Borghi. And
Right.
and if you two of those guys are playing a position where there's only one of them on the field, and so it's going to be a bummer if McIntosh is not used that much, because we saw that he's good. He's not maybe as good as Max, but
He is good.
he was a fine replacement.
There's no doubt he's good.
So this is just obviously throwing shit at the wall, but like, and hoping it sticks. But like, maybe we see Max. Maybe they figure something else out. Like how they kind of figured out. They had a few kind of plays for Travell Harris. That play when he would come across formation and then take the handoff. Things like that. Just to kind of get everyone in the game. And so otherwise, man, like, yeah, it's going to be thin, and it's going to be frustrating if you're not getting much production out of those other receiver positions, and then like McIntosh is sitting on the field, or McIntosh is sitting on the bench, or Borghi's sitting on the bench and like not getting reps. So it just seems like Borghi is the type of guy that you'd want to get as many reps as possible. And if this offense is running how it normally runs, Borghi's going to get less touches than he normally gets in the air raid that he was doing before, because he's not going to catch. We've seen, not just from last year, but when Rolovich was at Hawaii, that the running back does not catch many passes in this offense.
No, not at all. Very, very, very few. They're almost always staying into block. And that's kind of how that one works. I mean, the hard part is, okay, you look at, well, who, if we were to rank our playmakers in order, it's to me, it's like Travell and Max, 1A, 1B, however you want to, sort them. And then it's Deion McIntosh, and then it's, whoever after that,
Calvin
Jackson or whatever. But it's like, okay, so two of your top three guys are running backs in a one back offense. So I don't know. Nick Rolovich showed a willingness to be creative last fall, in terms of the like the plays that he called, not necessarily in terms of personnel or anything like that. But he did do it a couple times with essentially making Travell Harris a running back, basically, through a play call. So I don't know. Maybe he gets creative, even if it's only like 10 plays a game where they're both on the field, like.
And we ran a lot of zone read, which wasn't necessarily typical, but it was just adapting to the personnel and what they could do.
Yep.
So,
and RPOs and things like that.
Yep.
So,
yeah.
I mean, I don't know. It's gonna be really interesting. What sort of has me, not feeling great about the whole situation is like I think there's a general assumption, the offense is going to be fine. I really feel like that's sort of the assumption is, the offense will be fine. There's lots of talent on offense. We just need the defense to get better, and then this team's going to be back on its upward trajectory. And I'm like,
yeah, we can't afford to just lose two of our starting receivers from last year and just expect to keep going
on an offense that wasn't actually very good.
Yeah.
And I understand COVID and all that. So, the caveats apply, but let's be real. The offense was not that good. So, okay, now you're removing two explosive playmakers, right? Two guys who are fast, real fast. You're taking them off the field. And then, okay, you're bringing back Borghi.
Fast in an offense that pushes vertically.
Right. And now you're bringing back Borghi, which is great, but also we got, I think, good enough production out of running back. So, that doesn't necessarily make the offense better. I don't know, man. You need your quarterback to be a lot better than he was last year, whether that's Delora or Garantano or Cam Cooper. But, man, that they got to get a lot more out of that position to be as good as I think people are wanting them to be. And I think the defense is going to be better. I think they've added talent. I think they are going to be a bit better, but how much better? Better enough to compensate for how much worse I think the offense is going to be compared to what we got used to, right? We just sort of, again, I just think our fans' brains are, pretty much on the Mike Leach situation where it's like, hey, no matter what, he's going to roll out a good to great quarterback and a top 25 offense.
Well,
and that's just what we're doing.
They may forget, like early in Leach's career at WSU, there was a couple not very good offenses. So it's
Yep.
even with him, it wasn't a guarantee. So
yeah, but like it had been that way for the last 6 years.
Yeah.
So people are just like, oh yeah, and Rolovich is an offensive coach and he'll figure it out and we'll be fine. And I'm just I don't know, man. I feel like that's being a little too fast and loose with assumptions, and I hope I'm wrong. Like I really, really hope I'm wrong. I hope they're super fun to watch. And Rolovich did say one of the answers to his question was talking about like the value of having had spring practices this year, and it wasn't like somebody asked specifically about spring practice where they were like, how much did it help you to have spring practice? It was some other question, and as he was giving his answer, he said, you know what, like spring practice, man, I underestimated how much we would miss not having that last year.
Right.
And I remembered how valuable it was this year. And so, maybe that's the key. Maybe that's where we're at, although Delora didn't practice in the spring, but
nope.
Maybe that'll do it. I don't know. I don't know. I just can't shake a little bit of sinking feeling that we're just not as talented as we need to be. And these, defections / injuries, are just, they're not helping, man. They're not helping.
Yeah. And I don't know, like hopefully they're fine, and hopefully the defense is better, and maybe Jaden and Delora is better, or it would truly be a surprise. Maybe Gorentano or Cooper come in and they're just incredible. But I felt like a Tennessee fan saying that right there. But yeah, it's, I don't know, man. Like I'm this season, I want to be able to go to Pullman, and I want to go hang out, and I want to watch football games, and I want to tailgate. And honestly, right now I'm in the mindset that like the football is like tertiary to just it existing, and then me being able to go to Pullman and hang out with my friends. And then third is the football is good. So, but I'm sure if we struggle against Utah State, who is not very good, like then that may snap me back into focus on, it's way more fun when we're good at football,
Yeah. Yeah.
Like last year it was like, oh, this, whatever, we're playing, this is kind of dumb. And then they won the first game against Oregon State, and you're like, shit, that was fun. Like, that was
totally.
Cool. Like, that was
absolutely.
So fun.
Both of us got sucked into that, right? Because we were both on team like we shouldn't even be having this season.
Yeah.
Well, okay, we're having the season, so I guess we might as well tune in. And then it was like, this is fucking awesome. Like it was like, we were very, very excited about the Nick Rolovich era, and then. So I imagine that'll probably carry us for a little while this year, right? Like, I mean,
just the fact that it's happening with fans in the stands and everything. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, unless they just, would even, so let me throw a couple scenarios at you. Okay. 'Cause you're planning on going, are you going to all 3 September games?
Yes.
Is that the plan?
Yep.
Okay. So you're planning on going to all 3. I'll be at USC, provided it's not a forfeit. So, you're going to go to all 3. Like, even if they lost to either Utah State or Portland State, would that dampen? Like, how much would that actually dampen it? Just because you're so excited?
I think. Honestly,
does
don't.
The question make sense?
Yeah,
like
no, it does. No, so
okay.
what I liken it to is when my first season as a season ticket holder was after I lived out east for 5 years, and then and I came back in 2015.
Yep.
And my very first game was a loss to Portland State in the rain and Labor Day.
That's right.
And
I remember that. You and your dad were there.
But what happened that day? It was an 11 a.m. game. Like
Yep.
I remember me and my dad, we went to the Cub and got chai teas and put Fireball in them and had fire chai to start the day, or chai balls. Someone called it chai balls. That's a good one, chai balls. And then we tailgated in the morning. Ended up hanging out with BA, staying with his buddies. We had like this long day where the game was over, and then we went back and chilled, and people took naps, and then we went back out to the Coug because it was such an early game. I remember seeing Chazanow at the Coug, and it was like his first game, and we're just like talking to him, and we're like, "I'm sorry, dude. Like you moved all the way from the East Coast, and like this is what you get." I'm like,
yeah,
like you're like go Cougs, like. But then like just like doing all that was so awesome. Like the tailgating, going to the Coug, hanging out with friends, like I was just so happy to be doing that. And that's often like what happens once the fall starts. And honestly, like since I've been a season ticket holder, like pretty much every season except for the last Leech season was like really good. Like except for, those early season FCS losses, but then the Pac-12 schedule was super fun and we like hardly ever lost. And so it was like almost, there were some heartbreaking ones like Stanford and whatever. And then that UCLA game was just awful. But they mostly won every game, like from when I've been a season ticket holder against FBS teams. They've almost what they like. The record is really good, and so like you'd have fun. The Cougs would win. You'd have more fun, with some glaring differences, whatever, or some glaring exceptions. But for the most part, it's been positive. So it's kind of hard. Like I got through that Portland State one, and I was just so excited to be back. Kept going, but then we just kept winning.
Yeah,
after
that was a good season to stick with it for sure.
And because the only games they lost after that were they lost the next week, and then they lost to Stanford, and then like the Apple Cup,
Cal.
The Apple Cup. Yeah, Cal was the next loss, and then and then they lost to Stanford
after that.
They lost to Stanford. No, they lost to Cal. Jeff called for Leach to be fired.
That's right, I did.
And then they ran a bunch off, and they lost to Stanford, and they ran a bunch more off, and they the last Apple Cup will ever go to a Husky Stadium.
Yep.
And then but it was still like I was so happy to have that season, but it was also we went like 9-4 or whatever.
Yes.
Like so it's
Which
like
helps.
But I don't see I don't see us losing to Utah State. I don't see us losing to Portland State, but I also don't think it's like out of the realm of possibility, especially Utah State. But I think like that first month is going to carry me. Plus, like I've already made like almost every game, like I've like planned who I'm going with, and like and at least for the first, the October 9th game, homecoming, I have to go to a wedding. Thanks, Chris.
Chris.
But then October 16th, I got this like thing where like a bunch of my friends are going, and then so up until then 23rd, whatever, those was games after that I haven't planned yet, but I'm sure I'll make plans. So a lot of it for me is just the social aspect. So I'm kind of just want that. So honestly, but again, I haven't had a year as a season ticket holder that was truly atrocious and terrible. So, yes, if we are that terrible, that will be tested, and we will see. Like this will be
I'm thinking.
Hopefully, it's not that test, but if it is, then I'll find something out about myself.
Yeah, I think September will go well enough to kind of sustain you into October. November is a tough sell, right? If the team's bad, like
there's only one.
There's only one game in November. That's true.
That's the easy part, and it's not the Apple Cup, which thank you.
That's true. Yeah, see, that's a double bonus. I don't know. Like I'm thinking it's going to play out like okay victory over Utah State, okay, comfortable victory over Portland State.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think we probably get run by USC. And then it's like, what do we actually have here? I think that's kind of how those first 3 games are going to go, but it should at least sustain some excitement.
You know what? That's funny. I just searched like WSU football schedule, and I clicked on the Google one, and like I scrolled up. Like I don't know why, I was just playing with the wheel, and when you scroll up, the first season that it shows is 2016, and so like the first game you see is losing to Eastern Washington.
Damn it, son of a. Yeah,
but
still not over it.
Yeah. So we got Utah State, Portland State. This is actually very weird, like how they did this.
Oh yeah.
It goes just on this Google. It's 20 it has 2016 that entire season, and then randomly only on the left column you have 2017 Montana State, 2019 New Mexico State, 2019 Northern Colorado, and then it gets into this season's schedule. I don't know what's going on.
Everything, man.
I don't know.
Ruins everything.
But what happened? Why does it have one game from the 2017 season, no games from 2018, the best season, and only 2 games from 2019? I'm so confused. Google, what is going on here? But yeah.
Need to work on that algorithm. Come on.
I gotta get the algo algae rhythm for my Space Jam fans out there.
There you go.
My Space Jam New Legacy fans out there.
Yeah. Still haven't seen it.
Well, you gotta get that HBO Max, brother.
I know.
It comes with my phone. That's
I'm
why
surprised
I have it.
that my children haven't made me go to the theater to see it with them yet, but
it's not bad. I mean, it's not good, but it's not bad. Like, I'll say,
see, and that's okay. Like that's
LeBron.
right.
LeBron is a better actor than Michael Jordan, but they also
that does not surprise me.
They also ask him to do a lot more, which creates some kind of awkward situations. There's a scene where he has to like cry, which is very interesting.
No, not a crier, huh?
Well, it was just kind of awkward, you know. But yeah, it was. I would say like taking out the nostalgia, it's probably just a better movie than Space Jam. But also, I would probably watch Space Jam, the original one, before it because of the nostalgia. I've seen it when I was a kid. But this is not Space Jam cast. This is what is this podcast? I don't even know. We don't do it very often. I kind of remember what it's called.
I know. We've been on like this every few week cadence. I'm like, we better do one this week.
Yeah, I've like people been like, I've had people ask me like, are you guys still doing that? Or like, yeah, we're just lazy. But hey,
well,
in August,
both of us, we've both had stuff going on, and
I promise we got some good shows planned in August.
I've been in and out of town, like, went to Disney World, went camping, we've been all over the place, man.
Yeah, I went to nowhere. I've been nowhere.
You have 2 children now, Craig.
Yeah,
makes it tougher.
Yeah, well,
makes it tougher.
The louder, more destructive one is with her grandparents for the rest of this week. So yeah. So it's eerily quiet in our house, like to the point where like we were just uncomfortable.
Yeah,
like
I know that I've had that feeling too. I've definitely had that feeling too. Let's see. You know where else it's going to be eerily quiet? In the Big 12.
What a transition.
Did that segue work?
Hell yeah.
Well, maybe it's going to be exceptionally loud in the Big 12 because they're going to raise a stink. I mean, are you buying that this is the end of college football as we know it, or like how are you feeling about this?
I think it's the beginning of the end of the current power structure.
Yes, I agree.
And you said it, and I agree. You said it in our Slack, I think you said on Twitter, and you've said it in person to me many times, is that in our lifetime, WSU won't be in that top tier conference. I kind of joke that they're kind of not right now too, but really they're obviously, when you look at revenues and especially TV revenues, the Pac-12 like dwarfs any Group of Five conference by a lot. Even though we're quite a bit behind SEC and the Big Ten, it's still like not even in comparison when you look at Mountain West TV contracts and stuff.
Yes.
At the same time, like, if the SEC 27, whatever, like, is getting the big, once they add Ohio State and Michigan too, and but I'm just joking, but yeah,
I don't think that's far fetched.
Yeah,
it's not going to happen now, but
eventually, the super conference of the major schools, because we've already seen like college football has always kind of been a have and have nots, but it's since the playoff has started, I think we've seen it like the top segregate itself even more from the rest. Like, Clemson, Ohio State, and Alabama are kind of on a different plane than the rest of the programs. And two of those are not currently in the SEC. But Texas and Oklahoma going to the SEC in 2025 at the latest, we'll say.
Latest, yeah.
Yeah.
And it'll almost certainly happen before that.
Yeah. Like, there's no way. Like, nobody
wants to do that, and nobody wants to do that for 4 more years.
No. Oh yeah. Like, I saw someone, I can't remember who tweeted, like, it's gonna be a real scenario this year where the Big 12 has to go on stage at the end of the Big 12 championship game and hand their trophy to Oklahoma, and like it's just gonna be it's gonna be the worst for them. But yeah, it's kind of nuts, Now we got the Big 12 is suing ESPN.
Yeah, not a surprise there, and I absolutely believe that ESPN orchestrated this on some level. I mean, college football is ESPN. I mean, it's for people who aren't sort of aware of how it works. I mean, everybody knows that ESPN broadcasts the vast majority of college football games, but when you think about the
Disney properties in general,
yes, Disney properties in general, college football is actually a business for them. It's not just the games that they broadcast for conferences. They own many of the bowl games, right? Like, they are ESPN properties.
They almost all the bowl games.
Yeah. All like any minor game is pretty much owned by ESPN.
Yeah. Almost anyone that's not, but even like the Alamo Bowl is not owned by ESPN, but ESPN has the rights to televise it, and so like even if they don't own it, like they have a stake in it, right?
Right. So ESPN is essentially, I mean, the CFP. You look at the CFP, like what it's become. You alluded to the fact that, it sort of further separated the haves and the have-nots, and ESPN is just so much of that. Right? Like ESPN is 100% invested in, and as they should be, by the way. This is not like ESPN's evil. That's not it at all. I mean, ESPN is a business, and they do what businesses do, and they, businesses cannibalize other businesses, and that's how capitalism works. So, if you're okay with capitalism, then you just kind of have to be okay with that. And, so ESPN does everything it can possibly do to maximize its investments. And, so you get for, 3-4 months, you could be watching a game between any two teams and they're going to talk about the college football playoff. There's going to be a segment somewhere in the game where they just ignore the game and talk about who's in the college football playoff and who's in position and what if they lose or win this game this weekend and what's it going to do to the rankings. And it's like, do you know I'm watching a game between WSU and Cal? Like, I don't give a shit right now about your stupid college football playoff, but that's ESPN, right? And so they just relentlessly push, and people are like, oh, it seems like the only thing that matters anymore is the college football playoff. Well, it is, because it's all ESPN talks about and analyzes and argues about on their, various, TV shows and radio shows and podcasts. Like it is a coordinated effort, a coordinated strategy to do this, right? Because it's inventory, it's eyeballs, it's ratings, it's all of that stuff. It's subscription fees, right? Because the only way to command the huge number that ESPN is able to command from cable companies is, to be relevant, right? So the idea that ESPN is sort of organizing teams and leagues to become a super ESPN property, maybe not necessarily in, the strictest legal terms, but by proxy, I guess would maybe be a way to say it. Like, that's not far-fetched at all. Like, that's in ESPN's best interest because nobody owns college football. There's a vacuum there for them to fill, right? As an organizer, as a director, right? I mean, all the things that an NFL commissioner or board of directors would do, right?
Yep, and
we don't have that in college football.
And just a reminder, ESPN runs the SEC network.
Yep.
And ESPN
it runs the Texas Longhorn Network.
There's such a thing called ESPN Plus, and they would
Yep.
love to drive subscriptions to that. They run the Longhorn Network.
Yep.
They put that all into ESPN Plus. If they have Texas versus Alabama on ESPN Plus, that's what they want. Like if they get, that's that they know what they're doing. It can be frustrating. It's made to the point where you can't, like, it sucks for us as people like you and I who grew up as fans of ESPN, who ESPN was like a core kind of like thing of like your like childhood and your adolescence, like watching Sports Center and stuff. Like those things are like unwatchable now, but it's because ESPN kind of grew out of being a place that was like a cool sports place, like to where like sports nerds could hang out, to the point where they're like they're a massive like commercial entity that is looking to make money. And so, yeah, if you own the SEC, the rights to the SEC network, like people I know associate the SEC with CBS a lot, but that's like one game a week.
And that doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah, exactly.
That CBS contract is over.
Yep.
And now with ESPN.
Yep. So there was ESPN. ESPN has SEC and smartly has SEC, because like SEC is, I know we hate to say it, we hate to say the bias and all that, but like it's far and away more popular than the Pac-12.
Yes.
And yes. There is like teams in the Southeast have way bigger fan bases and way more intense fan bases than we have out here, because for a lot of these states and places where these schools are, like, this is like, it's more connected to the region than it is just the alumni. Here it's, here it's more of your alumni connection, but there it's where if you're from Alabama, like you're in Alabama or maybe you're Auburn. And then, like, that's it. And if you're from Louisiana, you're LSU and like all that stuff, like Mississippi, you pick one of your schools, Georgia is,
well, and notably, most of those states don't have major metropolitan cities with professional franchises.
Exactly.
Like I think that's part of it too. And then, the family, the generational stuff, you tend to have families that have set down roots in the region versus, obviously we live up here, right? We get lots of transplants up here. So it's just, it's different. And so I'm with you. I mean, I get it. It makes total sense. And, if you were ESPN, what would you try and do? You would try and funnel as many of the great programs in the country to one conference that you have control over. That's what you would try to do.
Can I use this as an opportunity to throw some more dirt on Larry Scott's CEO grave?
Yeah,
like,
sure. I love that.
He could have had this. Like, he could have partnered with ESPN to run the Pac-12 network, but he chose instead to run it independently. And we weren't totally against it at the start. We're like, okay, yeah, if this gets going, but he overestimated the brand value of his
Yep.
member institutions. And so
Yep.
and so now the
And we're
Pac-12
getting backed into a little bit of a corner now.
Yeah.
As in the Pac-12 in terms of broadcast, like, if you want to partner with ESPN now, you're looking at being essentially time filler in between SEC games.
Yep.
That's basically what you become is, space filler, time filler. It's why that, we're already kind of there, right? I mean, that's why we play games at, 10 p.m. Eastern, because nobody else can play games at 10 p.m. Eastern, and they got to fill time on the channel. So yeah, it's frustrating in the sense that, things are going to be different. But I think, just kind of circling back real quick to my comment that, in our lifetime, we're going to be in a sort of a second tier conference. I'm not convinced that's actually a bad thing. And when our fans think about that second tier conference concept, they typically think like, oh man, does that mean we're getting relegated to the Mountain West? Right? Oh, well, what do you essentially like, oh, you're okay with, being dumped into the Mountain West? Like, I don't think that's what it's going to be. Because right now, when you just sort of look at college football, here's what you have. You have a tier of, prestige programs that have way more resources than anybody else, right? Like, and it's not just prestige programs, because I mean, like you mentioned, like, Ole Miss or whatever, right? I mean, they've got insane amounts of resources because they're in the SEC. So, but I'm talking more like, your prestige programs like, Alabama, Ohio State, Clemson, USC is still a prestige program, Oregon, Florida State, maybe Miami, LSU, kind of Georgia, on and on and on, right? Okay, so Michigan, Ohio State were two that you mentioned. So these are all teams that are national brands with rich football histories that, bring something to the table in terms of, both tradition and also revenue, right? Because of brand recognition, things like that. Okay, so you've got that tier. Right. And in the Pac-12, I'd put USC, Oregon, probably Washington in that tier. Even though, Washington hasn't really accomplished all that much. They have a huge stadium and a large following and, whatever. Okay. So there's that. And then if we say, okay, well, what's sort of the bottom tier, right? Well, that's your group of 5 teams, right? Your Central Michigans, your, I don't know, UNLV, whatever, like what have you in these others. And then there's like this tier like in between them that I think WSU is in, right? And I think if we're talking Pac-12, I think we're talking Utah, Oregon State, Colorado, Cal. Cal's a little different, I think, because of just sort of their academic standing and national profile.
Their connection to to UCLA.
Right. So I think maybe that one's a little different, but they're not a prestige football program. They've not had, a lot of success in football. So I don't know exactly where they fit, but you're catching my drift, right?
Yeah.
That there's like this in between tier that's not there. And so the way I kind of envision this thing setting up eventually is you're going to have a super conference of some variety, whether that's the SEC or whatever, that includes, all your prestige programs. And whether that's, 20 teams or 24 teams or 28 teams or whatever it is. And then you're going to have kind of these mid-tier conferences which is going to be, Wazoo, Utah, Kansas State, Oklahoma State, Texas Tech. I mean, you just kind of start thinking through North Carolina State. Like you start thinking through these programs that, have been good and have had, success. I mean, Wazoo's been to 2 Rose Bowls. We're not chopped liver, right? Like we've been there. But it's like at the same time, we don't have those resources, right? We don't have the resources that, those other programs have. So, I think we're going to there's going to be a fair number of schools that are going to occupy that space in the middle. And I don't know what that looks like in terms of competition. I don't know what that means like in terms of bowls or access to a playoff or whatever. But I think it's going to be sort of reminiscent of, you and I are both big, Euro soccer fans. I think it's going to be kind of reminiscent of a Premier League and a championship and then a League One. Like it's just going to be, these varied levels. They're going to stay mostly independent and, they may cross over like they do in Europe for cup competitions. But
now that you bring this up, like they would be really sick if schools could be relegated and promoted between
but that'll never happen. That'll never happen.
But that would be awesome.
That would be ideal.
Yeah.
That would be ideal. But that'll never happen because it is just, too much uncertainty. It's not the American way. Like earning it's not the American way.
Even though we have we have enough soccer teams in the US to do that.
Yes.
But
we don't.
But we don't.
Cost control.
Yeah, well,
that's why all those teams in Europe wanted to break off into a super league. Like that's, cost certainty.
Like, do you think
if we band together, then we're going to make a bunch of money every year, no matter what we do.
So what happened with that super league is that the pushback was so strong that they bagged it. Is there a possibility in the U.S. that
I see zero chance.
They try to form the Super League and, Ohio State fans are like, fuck that, we don't want to be in the SEC. Like, we're a Big Ten school, and it's so strong that Ohio State says, no, we're not going to do that.
Yeah, I see zero chance of that. Like, if we're just comparing it to what happened in Europe, like, the backlash in Europe was like, hey, we believe in this system. It was sort of it was a greater good kind of thing, right? Like all these, and it's hard, I think, for a lot of Americans, not you, I'm not talking about you. I'm talking about, some of our listeners who might not be familiar, like these clubs in Europe, like they are called clubs. They're not called, they call them teams. They definitely never call them franchises because they're not franchises, right? Like franchise is, hey, we grant you an operating license to be a part of our thing, right? Which is what we have in the NBA and NFL and whatever is we have franchise, right? We have a league and they say, here, you can run one of our teams.
Exactly.
Great. Yeah. In soccer, it's not. These clubs are all independent. I mean, they're connected through, federations and things like that, but they're all independent and they're clubs because that's literally how they started. Groups of people got together and started a club in the truest sense of the word. And so the commitment to the system, that pyramid system, right? The soccer pyramid of, moving up and moving down leagues, depending on, how you actually, play. There's just a really deep cultural commitment to that. Unlike here in college football, where there is a deep cultural commitment to doing what's best for me and my school and my program. And I mean, we've seen, conferences. It's not the first time conferences have blown up, right? Like the Big 12 itself, which, the irony is the Big 12 itself was an outgrowth of the old, Southwest Conference. Like the Big 12 itself was a cash grab. So, it's just, well, I mean, it's what we do. And I cannot fathom that, if someone says to Ohio State fan, hey, you're, you won't be a part of the Big Ten anymore, but you will make, ungodly amounts of money that will allow you to keep winning championships and paying your players. Cause that's around the corner. Right. So, and I'm talking not NIL, direct payments to players. That is around the corner. It's going to happen. It's just a matter of when. So if you say, well, we got to do this other league over here and make, more dollars because we're certainly not going to take the dollars out of our pockets. The existing dollars, we need more dollars to fund this, and that's where it's going to go. And so fans will just go, okay.
And every time they do these cash grab things, it makes it harder to not justify giving the players money. And I think as the kind of tenor has changed, like almost pretty dramatically, even in the last couple years, like this, even like. Texas and Oklahoma is going to move the needle. Them going, because it's at that point you're like, you cannot deny that all of this is about money. Like when Texas and Oklahoma are moving to the SEC.
And oh, by the way, Texas is already the richest athletic department in the country by a lot. Like it's not even close. Like the revenue that Texas brings in. Nobody else comes, not even all those SEC schools, right? Like it's not even close. And so what, you're going to move to the SEC to make more money? like what are you doing with more money? What are you going to do with like you have all the money in the world and you can't win a Big 12 championship. Like you're going to go to the SEC and collect more money and then lose to, go 7-5 or whatever while losing to Alabama, Georgia, and LSU. Like, but like you said, it's the gate, like everything's just sort of laid bare at this point, right? Like it's about money. It's always been about the money, and it's never been about anything else. And
do you think
this is massive? This is massive.
Do you think this is a step in the direction of football teams at colleges becoming not necessarily directly run by the schools, but more a licensed name of the schools? Because when you talk about paying players, that might be where the actual university is like, I don't know about that. Like, or we definitely would have to see probably a disassociation from the NCAA, which I think the bigger these conferences get, the easier that becomes for them. I
think that's for sure going to happen.
Yeah, but I wonder if like eventually some of these brands are just so strong themselves. They're almost like the brands of those European soccer clubs we're talking about, where like here, most WSU fans are WSU alums. Not all. Like I would say, like it's not all. And there's a lot of WSU fans that are not WSU alums because they're like family or they grew up in Washington, whatever. But compared to,
it's most.
Like most Texas fans did not go to Texas. Most Alabama fans did not go to Alabama. Like these are
Washington fans. We joke about it, right?
Yeah. Then Washington has a huge number of fans, and we always make fun of them, which is like it's just because we got to do it. Even though we would love to have those fans,
all those T-shirt fans for sure.
But there's a point, like already like a lot of these brands are bigger than the schools themselves. Like it.
Oh yeah. No doubt.
Like not every program could survive without the association with the university, I don't think. But if you're talking these programs, Texas and Oklahoma moving to SEC, those are two programs. Just the football teams in themselves are a bigger brand than the university, and so it's interesting. I think it would be it'd take a long and it might. The disassociation might be if they took that away from it being like these kids are college athletes, then you'd be too close to a professional league, and then it'd be like you almost be competing with the NFL at that point, and they wouldn't do that. But it is like the football programs themselves are becoming so massive that it's almost like they're associated with the university only because, like, there's a bunch
because that's the way it was
that's
set
because
up
the way it's always been, right? Like, so,
like if we were reinventing this system, we would not.
But like, look at how pliable it is. Like, look, we were just talking about Renard Bell. Like, he can come back for a 7th year at WSU next year. Like. It's not like and I think like, all these, like, we were just like, okay, every football, like last year doesn't count. You can play again. So really, is it about the academics at all? like, it kind of, the whole point of the eligibility spectrum is based on how long it takes normally a student to graduate from college. Like that's why it's 4, maybe 5 years. But now we're like, you can come back next year. So wait, but they were still going to school last year. It was online, but they were still doing it. But we're like, but actually you can play the sport next year too. Like, so what was more important there? Like, was it the sport or was it the athlete? Were they equally important? Like, I don't know. Like, it kind of showed, like, I think the NCAA, they kind of had to do it, but they kind of also showed how weak they actually are in that, in having to like give up so much, just being like, no, it's not actually attached to the regular progression of like, it's so much like, what do we call Renard Bell next year? Because we call them freshmen,
super duper senior.
We call them freshmen, sophomores, junior, senior, because that's what you call school kids. Like, but
right.
like, what is a seventh year player? Like a doctoral student, right, or something? You know, like we were joking before. But yeah,
well, they've started to put graduate student on some of the rosters.
Yep.
Where it's like,
yep.
You know, they put that.
That's usually if they're a grad transfer, they'll definitely put that.
Yeah, I just know that you know, Texas and Oklahoma moving is absolutely.
It's gonna cause
like this is. I don't think anything has ever happened before, and this may sound like hyperbole, but and I'm certainly no college football historian. So if there's something else, you know, let me know. But in my lifetime, there's nothing else as seismic in college football as this. In terms of something that has the potential to like just completely transform the sport. This is it, man. Like that's, you know, you've got those two joining, you know, what is, you know, the most powerful league, football league in the country. It's probably it's going to result in the conference they leave behind dissolving or merging or being absorbed by or something, some other conference. You know, it's a big deal. I don't, by the way, just on the record, I tend to think that the Pac-12 benefits most from not expanding.
Yeah.
I just don't know what they gain from any of the Big 12's leftovers. It just doesn't, I don't know, man. Like, do you gain much by picking up Kansas State, right? Like, you know, and Kansas is obviously trying to angle
Kansas State is in
toward
Manhattan,
the Big Ten,
man. It's in Manhattan.
Oh yeah. Woo! Imagine recruiting there. You know, like Oklahoma State, like what are you gaining from that? Or Texas Tech, right? Like, oh well, now we're in Texas. No, you're not. I mean, you are, but you're not. Like you're in, you know, West Texas, right? Like that's not where you're trying to get eyeballs. Those aren't the kids you're trying to recruit, right? Like do you add Houston? That's a tough sell in the Pac-12 because, you know, Houston's academic profile isn't the same as, you know, the rest of the Pac-12. So I feel like at some point you're just adding teams to add teams. And I think expanding to 12 has clearly worked. I think, you know, Colorado and Utah have both been great additions to the conference. And after that, I don't know, man. I don't see anybody who, instantly either raises the profile of the conference or adds money. And when you're adding teams, you're putting more mouths at the table to feed, right? And I just don't see where there's anybody out there, even Kansas, by the way. Like yeah, Kansas is a great basketball school. I don't see how that adds the kind of value to your conference you're looking for when, you know, football is driving the bus. So I'd like to see him stand pat. I really think that the best option going forward, if they can swing this, is try to come up with some kind of strategic partnership with the Big Ten. Mm-hmm. Because I think the Big Ten is in a similar space. Like I don't know that they benefit from adding anybody. Could they add Kansas? They could add Kansas, like, you know, and just have
the Big Ten
really
would probably benefit
school,
from contracting. At this point.
Contracting. And by the way, I also think that that's sort of the next step for the SEC, to be honest.
Yeah.
When I start looking at some of the schools in the SEC, I'm like, you know, like, how good are you feeling if you're Mississippi State, right? How good are you feeling if you're South Carolina? You know,
Yep.
Vanderbilt, like, do you really fit? I don't know. Like, I mean, I know it's Nashville eyeballs and all that, so maybe that, you know, becomes the thing. You know, Missouri, which left the Big 12 to join the SEC. I mean, you know, yeah. Are they really super excited to keep Missouri? Like,
yeah.
I don't know. So I don't know. Like I said, it's going to be really interesting to see how it all shakes out. But I think that's kind of where it goes eventually. We end up with, a major conference with 20 or 25 or so prestige programs, everybody else sort of whittled down to a second tier. And then what's your group of five now as sort of the third tier. And, I don't know if that's good or bad. I don't think that's necessarily bad for Wazoo. We don't talk too much about money here, but it's that sort of thing that could potentially rein in the incessant spending, because you're no longer trying to compete with Oregon and Washington and USC, at least not on a direct level. So,
yeah.
Maybe that's a thing that could actually help. And if we love our school, like, I don't know, like I try to imagine myself in that kind of scenario where you're in a conference with Utah, Cal, Oregon State, maybe, Oklahoma State, Texas Tech, et cetera, like all those kinds of schools. And I'm trying to think, like, is that the sort of thing that's going to make me feel like I don't want to follow the team anymore, right? Because, oh man, we don't have a chance to go to a Rose Bowl, which we're not going to anyway soon because the Rose Bowl is not going to exist the way we know it anyway. But I think you catch my drift, right? Mm-hmm. Like, oh, the biggest prize is no longer out there. Well, fuck, we've attained the biggest prize like twice in, 70 years, right? Or 80 years. And so it's like, and we've never won a national championship and we're never going to win a national championship. And it's like, could we still have a season like 2018, right? Without, feeling like, the CFP is the goal. Like, I'm like, that's not a realistic aspiration for us anyway. And so I'm not sure that if I'm in a conference like that I'm just going to feel like, oh man, it's a second rate conference. I don't want to follow the Cougs anymore. I mean, my affinity for the Cougs is deeper than that.
Well,
so maybe if we drop down to like Division II, Division III, and we're like truly like not big time, then maybe that's different. But I kind of imagine that second tier, and I don't think that's all that different.
I tend to agree with you pretty much, but because like I said, like most WSU fans went to WSU, but I will say this, like, and I know I'm not alone in this. When I was deciding where to go to school, I was like, okay, I'm going to go to an in-state school for tuition, and I want to go to one of the major one of the Pac-10 schools. And so I applied to UW and WSU, and so that's where I went. And would there be a 2030 version of Craig that would like who's 17 and thinking about schools would be like, well, like WSU doesn't play at the highest level, so I want to go to UW because they're in like the big time, so maybe
that's fair.
Maybe I don't know, maybe you lose a few like applicants. I don't know. Like they obviously we've seen data on like when the football team does well, when the basketball team does well. We even talk about how this affects basketball. It's weird, but if it also
basketball.
Oh, excuse me, on the
what does that have to do with anything?
But honestly, if it's like the one thing Sherwood said in our chat, like if this brings down college basketball, I'm gonna be pissed. Like,
yeah.
Like, if you screw up college basketball, like, just because of your little football school, like, conferences, like, that's going to be really annoying. We've already seen, like, football has, like, messed up basketball in some ways, like, destroyed some, like, pretty awesome conferences and stuff like that. But, yeah, please don't ruin college basketball. I like college basketball.
Yeah, I agree. You might be right. I mean, maybe it becomes a disadvantage for the school, in terms of attracting students. I don't know. I guess I just would say like, I didn't pick, like, does it become less big time because you're not in, a premier conference? Maybe, but I also feel like what's the point of being in a premier conference? Well, it's winning conference championships and maybe playing in a Rose Bowl, playing in a playoff, whatever, right? It's like, well,
and I think there's also,
we don't really have realistic aspirations of that right now.
But I think some of playing in the Premier Conference also means like that like incredible programs and athletes come to your school. Like you get to watch. Like it was really cool when I was in WSU, even though they beat the hell out of us. Like watching the Reggie Bush, Matt Leinart, like
Yes.
USC.
Yeah, that's true.
Like that was like watching Reggie Bush in person was incredible, and like watching the Pac-10 basketball when I was in school, like having Arizona come in and UCLA and all that, like was like pretty cool. And
Yes.
so there is some of that draw. Like it's not only about what your team can accomplish, but it's also about, and we've seen like even like alums, and when they buy tickets, like at WSU, it's long been more about the opponent than it's been about how WSU is doing. And so
But don't you think you would still see some of that though? Like, I mean, Washington, let's say Washington joins whatever this SEC conference becomes, like they're still going to need non-conference games.
Yeah.
Right? They're not going to play.
Oh God, we still got to play.
I mean, maybe they will. I mean, maybe they will play.
We have to
11
choose. We have
games,
to choose to play the Apple Cup then. My God,
I know, right?
My God, that would be miserable.
we're gonna choose misery now instead of being forced into it. Yeah.
Although
if
UW is paying us money to play them, kind of funny.
Yeah. I do think you're right though. I mean, there definitely is a part of that, being able to see, big time teams, and people have been talking right for years about, Wisconsin's coming, right? Like we've been looking at that one for years.
I'm mostly more excited to go.
Fingers, it might happen.
I'm mostly more excited to go to Madison, honestly.
That's
where
it should be a party.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know, man. I don't know, but I think this is the first step toward a drastically different college football within the next probably the next decade or so. And it's gonna be interesting. It's gonna be wild.
All right. Well, we haven't taken a break, so you're just gonna insert one somewhere.
Nah, we're not taking it. We're not taking a break.
Yeah. So
ain't nobody at SB Nation listening to this thing and making sure we're taking breaks.
There's a couple more topics I wanted to kind of rapid fire. One, what are you drinking?
I drank coffee. In case that's not clear from my, rambling thoughts. Because I actually I made a brisket today.
Ooh.
Which was my first time smoking an entire Packer brisket. I had made a point before, and now after doing the Packer, I'm like, okay, I get it.
Progressing.
Yeah, I learned a lot, and I studied and came up with a game plan, and I think it turned out pretty great. If people want to know how it turned out, I'm sure they can find the tweets on Twitter. I kind of because I did along with reading Aaron Franklin's book, Franklin Barbecue, the guy with Franklin Barbecue in Austin, wrote a book, or co-wrote a book, as it were, just kind of talking about smoking his briskets, and that's the thing that he obviously is most famous for. And the book is, largely about sort of the way that he smokes them, which is not the way that virtually anybody would smoke them at home, because almost none of us have the kind of smoker that he uses, just the type, the offset smoker, right, where there's a wood box on the end. Most people don't do that anymore. Most people have Traegers or whatever. I have a pit barrel cooker, which is a upright drum smoker. So anyway, long story short, it turned out really well, and so I had a couple of lagers with it, and then I was like, if I drink another lager, I will probably fall asleep. So I had some coffee instead. So there you go.
Well, I have, I only drink the hype styles. So I have a Hefeweizen.
Ooh.
From
old school.
From Holy Mountain. They make it's always funny whenever they release a beer, they're like, everyone's been asking for it. We made it for you. Everyone's been screaming for it to come back. Like, it's a joke, obviously. But it's called Pilgrimage, Bavarian style Hefeweizen. They do a really good job. When I'm looking for Hefeweizen, I want that banana flavor. I want that clove flavor. They knock it out of the park. Very well done. Excellent Hefeweizen. An underrated style, I think, and then a style that is under brewed as well. Like, it's very good. Like, and better than like Pyramid Half when we got into it, but this is like a next level. Like, it's much better. Like when I lived in
Well,
Nash,
that means the return is right around the corner,
yeah.
right?
So, but Holy Mountain, and then I finished it up with a Holy Light. Their take on a premium American light lager, which is very good.
Nice.
It's like just like a better version of Busch Light or whatever. Like, it's pretty good. And I love it. It's funny. I went to Holy Mountain where I've often waited in line for hours to buy, all sorts of barrel-aged stouts and sours and stuff. And I went there before the Sounders game on Sunday, and I left with a mixed case of Hefeweizen and light lager. And I'm like, I think my tastes might be changing.
Well, mine too. I mean, we've talked about this. It's like, it's at some point, like IPAs have just sort of break your palate, man. It's like, you just kind of want something lighter.
Especially in the summer.
Yesterday. Yeah. And so today I made brisket. Yesterday I made spare ribs because it's that time of the year. I'm home all day, so I can smoke meat all day. And, so I had a City of Dreams. It's like a kind of a hazy pale ale that
from Fort
George makes. And it's really good. It's a great beer. I love it. And it's sessionable. It's like 5.5%. Like, it's a really good beer, but it's still very clearly, a pale ale. And it's, by the time I had my ribs, I was just kind of like, I don't know. The flavor of my ribs is kind of weak. And Sarah's like, what are you talking about? Like, it's super strong. And I'm like, oh, I think maybe my beer kind of messed my palate up before I had my ribs, And so today I made sure to have a lager. I went to Safeway to find like a lager or Pilsner or something. And it's because Safeway was close. And it's just like, I'm looking at the shelves and I'm like, there were like 2 decent lagers and everything else was IPAs.
Like Rogers Pilsner or something.
They didn't even have Rogers. They had every other, they had Meowza from Georgetown.
Wow.
Like they had like
Surprising.
every other Georgetown beer. They did not have Rogers. And I'm like, okay, so I'm looking. I ended up with a Ziggy Zaggy from Silver City, which is fine. Crisp, refreshing.
I would say the Fremont
beer.
Golden Pilsner is a good grocery store lager.
They did not have that at Safeway. Yeah, I know. It was just like, I'm like looking up and down the beer and I'm just like, oh my gosh, man, they had nothing. They had a lager from Rogue, which I was like, didn't really want to go there.
Kind of over that.
And so, like I said, and then they had Deschutes, they had that. And I was like, so I'd rather support Silver City and buy their beer. So that's what I did. And it was perfectly fine for an 88-degree day in Washington while eating brisket.
Oh, yeah.
Hell yeah. What else?
So we got.
Wrap this up?
I don't really want to talk about NIL. We can talk about it later, but especially as we see more of it come. But funniest thing I saw, immediately when they announced this, I was like, Max Borghi's going to be big on Cameo. Max Borghi is on Cameo, and Max Borghi says he is.
Yes, he is.
He is putting 100% of the proceeds back into his offensive line, so he can buy them dinners.
I love that.
Which is awesome. Max Borghi, $70 on Cameo, hell of a deal. I foresee.
Hopefully, he's keeping some taxes aside.
I foresee myself buying a Max Borghi Cameo for someone, at least one person, this fall. And I am open to having them bought for me as well. So, I love Cameo is one thing that I think is fun as hell. My partner got my sister Sonia Morgan from Real Housewives of New York to tell her
that's awesome.
to do her gender reveal, her baby reveal, and it was my sister loved it. It was so funny, and I think Cameo is hilarious, and I hope that Max. I mean, $70, like he gets a couple of them, he can take the offensive line out for dinner, and then So support your local offensive line. Buy a Cameo from Max Borghi.
Absolutely.
I thought it was funny. He showed the one that apparently John Bledsoe's mom bought for him, and then he's like,
I know, that was hilarious.
I hope to meet you someday," and all this stuff.
Right.
Yeah, that was pretty funny.
Because they were teammates. That's the joke.
That's the joke, guys. That's the joke.
Yeah. No, I think it's cool. And, I'm really curious to see, how it kind of shakes out with, as the market sort of figures it out, right? Cause there were a lot of very splashy deals right off the top. Right. And, so it's going to be, I think, more of these smaller deals that kind of determine how this is going to work. So,
yeah, I've seen a couple one of the women's basketball players, not even one of the famous ones. I can't. Michaela, no, I can't remember which one now. She already had like a little partnership with someone, and she only had like a few hundred Twitter followers. I thought that's pretty interesting.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Kook fans already done a couple things. They've got, Dallas Hobbs is writing a column, and
I think we could maybe
Calvin Jackson's got a podcast. Like,
we could maybe
that's awesome.
Get someone in on a shirt. Get Breaking Tea involved. We could get a player shirt, because maybe we could like retroactively get Gardner Minshew. if only this existed for Gardner Minshew, he would have made so much money his year in Pullman.
So much bank.
Just like
so much bank.
A crazy amount of money.
Basketball.
The roster is now pretty much set. Because we haven't podcast since he left, but so Vova is transferring. Vova Markovetsky, just a fan favorite. Had his limitations, but was just a fun, unique player. And as
the big bear,
as John Andershek said on our podcast before, just one of the better, just a fantastic rim protector, if not a shot blocker, but just someone that scared teams from attacking the rim. But obviously we talk about, he couldn't, like, he kind of had to be selectively deployed and all that. So he wasn't like, wasn't like always useful, but he was just fun as hell to watch. It's always fun having a big dude like that. Vova dunks, Vova hook shots, Vova rebounds, Vova blocks. I won't miss them all. I won't.
Vova
slams. I'll miss type.
Vova pass, Vova charge.
I'll miss typing that out in all caps. I'm just gonna. I don't know what I'm gonna do without it. So he hasn't landed anywhere yet, right?
No, and I think that he's going to be really useful for someone in a mid-major, right?
100%.
I mean, it's being big is value, and you don't have to guard. The biggest issue is when he was on the floor, we had to go zone.
Yeah,
like that was just like because he could not. As soon as he came on the floor, if they were not zoning, he was going to get stuck in pick and rolls trying to defend those, and his feet just were not good enough for that at a Pac-12 level, right? So at a lower conference, you're not guarding the same kind of athletes, and so not quite as challenging to play defense, as sort of a slow-footed 7-footer. So wherever he goes, I'll be completely rooting for him. I'm bummed out that they had transferred. It always made sense that he'd be one of the guys to go. When we had talked, I can't remember if we talked about it on the podcast. I know we talked about it privately. And when we talked, it was like, we speculate on which guys sort of make the most sense. Vova was always one of them. And then that became even more so once, Muhammad Gay comes into the fold. It's like, what, you've got 3 7-footers, 3 athletic 7-footers, or 6'11" guys anyway. There just aren't going to be any minutes for him beyond the fact that he doesn't really fit from a Pac-12 level. So best of luck to him, man. Like I said, wherever he lands, I will follow him with interest and hope that he's awesome. I really hope that because he seems like a good kid. He worked super hard, changed his body quite a bit in that 1 year he was, a year and a half he was with us. Really added some muscle and, so yeah, I hope he kills it wherever he goes for sure. Just like all the guys who leave.
Yeah.
Wish no ill will on any of them.
Absolutely. All right. Yeah. Well, we did it. We recorded an episode.
We did it.
You're welcome, everyone.
Yeah.
If you want to follow me on Twitter, I'm at the Craig Powers. If you want to follow Jeff, he's at Pod VS Everyone. If you want to email us questions, comments, tell Jeff that he's an embarrassment. That is podcastvseveryone@gmail.com. But I mostly read those emails, so if you say that if you send you're an embarrassment, it probably I'll see it, and then I'll think I'm an embarrassment, and I will not take that very well. So please don't do that. Yeah. So I guess that's it. That's all.
That is
Go
it.
Cougs, Jeff.
Go Cougs, Craig. Black Lives Matter.
Black Lives Matter. Get vaccinated.